Okay, good morning. Hello, everyone. We are very pleased to have this session of Unisabana Ágora with such a remarkable professional like Professor Pushkar. So, first of all, thank you to being with us, Pushkar, and you are welcome here to La Universidad de La Sabana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to share uh, a few of my experiences and things I've learned along the way in my long career as a designer, as a developer, as a creative professional. So let me just, should I go ahead?
And let's wait a little bit. Angelica, can you please talk about the Vacouver Film School and why Professor Pushkar is here with us?
Thank you, Professor Juan Carlos and Professor Pushkar. It's a really pleasure to have VFS here with us again. I'm pretty sure that the people that is seeing us in the auditorium is really exciting with this profile, and Professor Pushkar has an amazing career to share with you guys today. So it will be an amazing experience for you to see how the VR games and experiences is actually living in Canada, and how is everything going with the VFS school. But as you know, we have this agreement almost 3 years ago. I think we began to work with VFS. Today with us is Maria Jimena Trujillo as well. She is the manager for Colombia. That is always helping us with all of your processes with VFS. As you know, we had our agreement to do the 8th and 9th semester in VFS in one of their 5th programs. One of them is 3D animation and visual effects, and the other one is video games. That is related with Professor Pushkar today, everything that he's going to talk about. So I'm pretty sure it's going to be a nice experience for you. Please take advantage of this conference, of this character that is here with us, because it's really a remarkable moment for the faculty to be involved with professionals of these profiles and these careers. For sure, we will have like thousands of questions, so make advantage of this space. Unisabana Ágora is a really important space for us as in the faculty, as you already know. So it's amazing to have you here, and we are so pleased to continue working with VFS in this kind of events. Welcome and enjoy all the conference. Thank you, Professor Juan Carlos.
Okay, thank you, Angelica. Well, let me introduce Pushkar. Pushkar is an UX and UI design lead with a focus on VR and augmented reality digital experience in Vancouver, Canada. His goal is to create the most immersive experience in virtual and augmented reality. He has over 20 years of design and advertising experience in some of the world's finest design studios and agencies. Over the last few years, Pushkar has been working at a world-leading VR and AR game studio, Archiact, where he recently developed Doom 3 VR edition. It's a finalist for a VR Game of the Year at the 2021 International VR Awards. Pushkar also teaches data visualization and human-centered design at the Vacouver Film School. So, Pushkar, once again, thank you to being here with us, and we are really happy to hear about your experience and everything you have to tell us.
Thanks, Unisabana and Professor Juan, to have me here. It's a privilege and a delight to talk to you all. I was a design student, just like you are all, some time ago, a long time ago, but we're pretty similar in the way we started our careers. So I was introduced pretty well. I didn't don't want to get into again talking about same thing, but one thing that I would like to mention is while I worked on Doom that was released in March of this year, currently I'm working on a AAA sci-fi narrative game in VR, which is scheduled to release 2 years later. And it's a very interesting experience because I'm passionate about storytelling. I'm passionate about how this new media is evolving for us to tell better stories, more immersive stories. And in my career as an advertising creative director, associate creative director, I was used to telling stories in a very short form, like 30 seconds, 1 minute. We used to do some long form content, but it's my ability to tell a story in a short duration of 30 seconds, 1 minute, that I feel like I drive on that experience every day. One kind of a disclaimer I would like to mention is that in this talk, I'm going to mention games a lot, but just remember in your mind, switch the word games with interactive experience, because we also do client work where we create experiences for different clients. They are not just games, they are training experiences, they are educational experience, they are world building experiences. And also another thing that throughout this talk, I'm mentioning user. The user is the person who uses the product, which could be a game, an interactive experience, all the things I talked about. But it can also be, the term user can also be switched with player or audience in this context. So with that, I'll just get started with my talk today. And I hope you have a lot of questions because I'm excited to answer that. Before we get into a whole exciting world of VR, AR, UX, and UI, I want to talk a little bit about UX, the user experience, which is kind of the core of things that I work on. So I'm a user experience designer at core. What I do is I create experiences. And as most of you, I was told you're design communication students. I don't have to get into too much detail about what UX means, but I just want to talk about what my interpretation of user experience is. So user experience for me is the experience, the whole experience that the player feels or the user feels about the story or the game and how it makes them feel it. It's everything from putting on the headset, turning on your computer, looking at that first thing. It's right from the beginning till the end. Everything is UX. So be it sound, be it haptics, be it visuals, it's all of that. And it's also user experience is calculated by how comfortable or intuitive the game is or the experience is, how the player, how easily can they feel that experience. And here I want to mention that user experience is the umbrella term, and user interface, the things we work with, the controls that we use, is a subset of that. If we start with UI, the user interface, without thinking of user experience, in my experience of many years, it always fails because UI is just part of UX for me. And that's the well-known fact because it affects the overall experience and a UI enables that experience. And if you can look at here that if I look at UX as a skeleton of what is inside, the things, how it makes it work, UI is how a user interacts with the game and how the information in the story, how the relevant facts of the story are shared. So if you think of Star Wars as the movie, that scroll in the beginning that comes can be interpreted as UI. But it's also the overall experience of the movie, of the film, is user experience. So here I want to just get into, there are two sides of the same coin. It's what is inside, what is outside. So UX is the underlying feel of it, like what everything feels like. And UI is what the player or the user feels on top of it. I won't go into too much of this because you're all design students, you're probably pretty aware of this, the latest trends and everything. But UX and UI are huge fields and they're growing every day. and a lot of other fields such as interaction design, storytelling, accessibility, information architecture, they are all kind of part of UX. When it comes to UI, visual design, if you're doing regular screen-based games, or the hierarchy, the layout, your gestures, your typography, your motion design, sound design, emerging field of haptics, how the controllers shake when something big happens or when the mood changes, how the music, the VFX can make the feel of the game change over time. That's what UI is for me. Also, before we get into these new emerging fields of VR, AR, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, I want to talk a little bit about immersive media, which for me is an umbrella term which kind of encapsulates VR, MR, extended reality, mixed reality. So if you look at immersive media, and immersive media has two key parts. One is virtual reality, and another one is augmented reality. And how do we kind of differentiate is virtual reality is a place where you can transport the user into a new world. It could be a fantasy world, it could be a science fiction world, it could be a world you want to show them, something different. And augmented reality is adding a layer, a new layer, a digital layer. It can be information, it can be facts, it can be sound, it could be VFX. It's adding that new layer to the user's existing world. So think about like how you can see augmented reality sometimes now on Google Maps. That's overlaying information on our existing world. So you can see, in a simple terms, virtual reality can replace reality really well. So you can use it to tell stories set in a virtual world, something that is completely different from our world, because users' eyes are occluded, they're closed from the real world when they're in VR. You don't see the real world at all. So you can build an entirely new world. So you can tell stories that can benefit from that kind of a thing. And currently, we have many headsets, and every day new headsets come out. But Oculus Quest, HTC Vive, these are kind of the headsets that virtual reality uses. And every day, VR is getting cheaper and more user-friendly. And I feel like this is what these two factors are going to take VR to the masses in the next few years, if they haven't already. Augmented reality is the second part of the spectrum, where you can use it like these glasses or Microsoft HoloLens or Magic Leaps or Google AR that we can see from our phone. So augmented reality is something that we can add a layer to alter the current reality. So you can tell some very interesting stories that are based in the real world, but they build on the real world. So you can set up stories that can use something like that. So many times people ask me, where should I use VR and where should I use AR? And I feel like it's a very complicated answer, and it can be as complicated as we want to make it. But the simple answer for me is that what kind of a story or what kind of an experience you want to tell. If there's an experience you want to transport the user to a player to a new reality, then VR is your best bet. And currently VR has very high fidelity. It looks really good. The tools are simple. So a lot more people can develop for VR. So VR is a good platform right now. But I feel AR is the future. And if you want to tell stories that are building on our real world, AR is a good platform for that. This is, in a nutshell, a very simple answer. There are a lot more factors about this talk is too short to get into, but technology, the reach, HoloLens, for example, is very expensive right now, but you could get a VR headset, a good one, for about $250 right now. So it's accessible. It costs almost like a good phone. It's pretty accessible right now. It's going to get even more. So here I'm getting into VR, where I talked about it can be used to transport users to a new world. And the current world, like my current world, if I put on a headset, it's occluded, it's hidden. So we can use VR for that. And it's really good for telling science fiction stories or fantasy stories where you're creating a new world. For example, the game that I worked on, Doom, is set up in Mars. So Mars is definitely very different from our world, and Mars that is shown in the game is also very different from the real planet. Right? So you're creating a world that is fantasy, it's science fiction. So VR is a very good medium for that. And here I'm trying to show in my small graphic that you can transfer the user to the world, you can take them to a new world. So I hope that's clear. I'm going to show a small trailer, a small portion of my game Doom. But bear in mind a small disclaimer that I'm showing a video, a 2D video with motion, of course, to represent a VR AR game, like a VR game. But for me, it's like only part of the picture. It's like watching a video, VR AR video is like seeing a photograph of a sculpture. Like it gives you the idea of what the sculpture could be, but it doesn't give you the height of it, the feel of it, how the sculpture makes you feel. And VR AR as a medium has much more going for it than a sculpture. It has more degrees of freedom that you could go around the sculpture. You could see the sound effects, you could have atmosphere. All these things add to the experience. So just bear in mind, the best way to enjoy this game would be to play it. And that's when you'll get the feel of it. Like we are watching this game, a trailer at 9 in the morning. So it's not as scary, but imagine you're playing this game. Like I was told, Professor Joan, he plays the game and it's pretty scary if you're playing in middle of the night on your VR headset with your aim controller. So here's a small trailer of Doom 3 VR. I hope the sound is working because that's half the magic.
We're under attack by an unknown enemy force. Fall back to Marine HQ to regroup.
So sorry about that for sharing this scary imagery early in the morning for you. But we had a great opportunity working with Bethesda and Aid to work on this great legendary IP that is Doom. And we had a part to play in that. That's such a great feeling. One of the things that is our goal to build an immersive experience is try to get this feeling of presence. So what is presence? Basically, it's a feeling that being physically there, it kind of makes you feel like when you're playing Doom, for example, it makes you feel like you are on Mars. Like this GIF I put, it's kind of funny. She's scared because the experience is so real for her. Although you know that you are in your living room, this is not real, but your mind makes it real. And that's the feeling we're trying to get. And in case of Doom, it's the horror, but we can use this medium to create a presence and create some very positive feel. So VR has been used to make people feel good, make people feel sad, make people empathize with a lot of people who are from different types of world. So a feeling of presence is something that we're trying to build. So people who play VR for the first time, they almost feel like they are in a new world. And this is our goal, one of the key goals. The second goal that we are trying to create is this feeling of immersion. Uh, so immersion is that makes player feel part of the story. They feel like they have agency. They can make changes. They can alter the world. Like in case of Doom again. Sorry, I'm harping on too much because this is so fresh for me. That you are this character who's making a change in the world. You're saving humanity, no less small goal. You're saving humanity from these devils. And we had a very positive review on Doom from this PSU Doom VR, where they talk about that they were really immersed in VR. And it's hard to explain, but I felt like I was there. And as a UX designer, you could not ask for a better compliment. Like the game is good. Some people enjoy it. Some people don't. It's very subjective. But this is my goal, that I'm trying to create that feeling of immersion. So as this is an exciting medium, you could use it to tell stories that are immersive in nature. And that's the key goal. I'm trying to get into UI, and UI is no small part. It's like I mentioned before, UI is how the player interacts with the world. So it's an interface. Like in this case, there's a weapon. How does the weapon feel? And for those who are fans of Doom, have played Doom before, you know this is the super shotgun, how it feels. So there is a lot of element of player expectations. So because Doom is such a legendary game and a lot of players, they have high expectations. So we made sure that when you pick up the weapon, it sounds like you thought it would. It feels like we can't make weight feel in VR, but we can use haptics and the sound and the recoil to make almost feel like the weapon behaves the way you want it to. So the second part of here I'm talking about UX after. And as I mentioned, I'm just trying to reiterate, bookend this thing that UX is how the game makes the player feel. And Doom has a very characteristic feel. Doom is a player fantasy of being a Doom Slayer, this character, a fighter who's saving humanity. So everything the player feels in the game is built on this fantasy, how the weapons feel, how the VFX is, like the effects are designed, how the sound is there, what kind of haptics, the vibrations you feel, how the world reacts, how the environment works. Everything is UX. All of that is user experience. So we strive to create that experience in a virtual world, a 3D immersive world. One of the best ways to bring this feeling is to create something that we call diegetic UI. So diegetic basically as a term means that it's part of the world. So the user interface that is part of the world can enhance that feeling of immersion and presence that we talked about. For example, not only we created this iconic super shotgun, a weapon in the game, but we also created this this watch that you see here. Because if you remember the traditional Doom game, the UI used to be down and it wasn't very immersive. You just took it, imagine the UI floating, and it won't feel like it's part of the world. That's why we created this Doom wearable, which is a watch. And we also created the score, like how many bullets you have remaining as part of the old style gun. It's already on the weapon. So when player is shooting, they can take a look at their watch and see how much their health is, and they can turn the weapon and constantly take a look at how many bullets they have. So this is the communication. This is the kind of story we're trying to tell. So using diegetic UI is a very loaded term. Please go ahead and look up it because diegetic UI or diegesis is something that is very common in filmmaking, in sound, and we are appropriating this term in a new medium because it builds on the older mediums of film, audio plays, and immersive audio, all those things. So here I'm going to talk a little bit about augmented reality. It's hard to explain because VR is so immersive and it's much more accessible now. And augmented reality, in my opinion, in all the experts' opinion, is going to take over the world pretty soon. If it already hasn't. And right now the problem is we are experiencing augmented reality on our phones, which is also another 2D medium. But imagine once we have the augmented reality glasses, like we talk about the Apple glasses or the Google Glass, when that becomes real, we're going to see augmented reality as good as VR. That fidelity will be that high. And there are headsets right now, like Magic Leap, HoloLens. They make this experience feel really good. Like there's a game on HoloLens called Fragments, which makes it feel like things are happening around your world, and it's a detective game set in your own house. So that kind of experiences we'll start seeing more and more. But AR projects, like I mentioned before, it adds a new layer to your world. So it just creates this new thing. And it's ideal for building stories that tell, build on the real world, like augmented reality games or alternate realities or things like magical realism. I'm quite excited about this. Like, imagine the concepts we could get about magical realism in this world. So I have an example of augmented reality game that I developed. It's currently on the phone. It's called Puzzle Go. So here we teach kids in a park a game where they learn basic concepts of math and chemistry in the real world, but simulated on their AR devices. So this was quite an exciting project. It's still ongoing. I'm no longer part of this project, but my friends who work on it, the mentor I worked with, they still work on it. So here I'm starting to get into how to build that experience for VR and AR. The best way, like I mentioned before, is to experiences. Just like imagine you're doing directing a film, you have to know the medium really well, and knowing the medium really well is to experience it, especially immersive mediums like AR and VR. So there are a lot of best practices about how to design for VR and AR, but by far, my best tip is to experience it more and more every day so you can get better at it. These are some other things that I have best practices that I'm talking about, but I won't go too much into detail. But if you could take out one thing, one best practice is to gain that ability to think in 3D, because our world is 3D and virtual reality experiences, augmented reality experiences, they are 3D. So the player doesn't need a lot to be taught, but there are a lot of other combinations that you need to use. So learn to think from 3D, going from the 2D medium like screen-based mediums or print or posters. Start learning to think in 3D because it will change the way you look at the world and it will change the way you design. We don't have a lot of time, but I'll just go through one project that I worked on, which is not Doom, but it's a smaller project that we created for TransLink, which is the transport company in Vancouver. They have metro, they have a ferry, they have bus services. So we worked on this project. It was created in a team of 5. It was created for Oculus Quest, which is a VR headset. And the time duration is 4 months that we took to develop it. So the 4 months is important because that tells you how much can be done in 4 months and in the team of 5. So like I mentioned, this was to share TransLink's vision of the future of transport in the year 2050. So it's not far future, it's just 30 years in the future. So how can we share that experience? The world doesn't exist, so we built it in VR. And it was such a great storytelling experience because we had the opportunity to tell that story about how we see transport in the future, in the near future. So one of the first things that we did here is created a one-pager. And one-pager is like your brief. When you work on advertising clients, when you work on design, you get a brief. So just like that, we have a one-pager, which is a brief. It talks about all these things. These are usual suspects. We're talking about users. We're talking about what problem you're trying to solve, your fear, your competitive, what work has been done, all that good stuff. This is a key element because this is something that us creators and the client agree on the vision of what this is going to be. So get this right. This is very important. The second part that I started designing as a user experience designer and a UX researcher is I started looking into who's the audience who's going to come to this exhibition. So I created this persona, two personas of the people who are trying to come. One is a housewife, one is a businessman. And I created this user flow. So the user flow for a UI, for a VR experience, start from the moment the user or the player comes to the venue. It's even before they put on the headset. So here you see my fourth step is user puts on the headset, but my first is welcome new users, get them seated, make them feel good, make them feel comfortable, because VR is a new medium and you're closing people's eyes to the real, so they're like a little scared. So you have to make them comfortable. And who are the actors who are helping us? It's the user who's the key, and it's in orange, and the green who's the attendant, because it was created in this exhibition. We couldn't be there every time, so we hired like 20 attendants who were looking at it, and the attendant is helped by a tech support and a supervisor. So this is how it's planned. And the second step to this was we created a storyboard. And in this this particular instance, we created a storyboard, and it had two parts. So one is you start the story in a future metro, or you start in a electric vehicle. But the second parts of the story, you go on an e-bike in the park, and that's similar. So we kind of show two stories, but they kind of merge here. So it was important to get client approval on that. And another part of that was to create a detailed storyboard, just like you would create for a TV commercial, but this is more spatial. So what kind of interactions happen? What kind of sound is there? Because we got the audio recorded. What kind of music plays? What kind of interactions are there? So we created all these things. And this part is also key because this is how you can contract other people. This is where client gives approval. Sometimes you get paid at this stage. So a first part of the payment will come when you share the storyboard. A part of that was later we shared in the 4 months that we worked, somewhere midway, we shared a gray box where we showed them what kind of how is the city of Vancouver going to look in the future? What kind of a metro it's going to have? What kind of buildings it's going to have? What are people going to be dressed at? What kind of interaction do we have? And because this is an interactive experience, I shared some of the interactions that I worked on. So this, for example, was done in Unity, but we also use in Unreal, which is another game engine. And in interactions were shared, they were approved, they were clarified. And in around 3 month stage, we shared something we call vertical slice. So vertical slice is not your whole experience. It's probably 1 or 2 minute slice of the whole experience, but it's detailed out to the final fidelity. So client can get an understanding how exactly it's going to look like. And I don't know if we have time, but I'm going to share a part of that VR experience that we created. I might just skip through midway. But this is the story of the e-bike. And again, imagine this is in VR, so the experience is all around you. So this is where you make the choice. You either go with transit or you go with e-car. And you chose e-car. And you're walking around in the city, you're traveling, you can change your seat, it doesn't go back, the speed changes, where are you going? This is a little long video, but it's going through the city. We created a lot of advertising to give that feeling of the future city. There's planes flying around, then the user gets a call from their friend, and they're like, okay, let's meet in the park. So that sound comes on, and the player picks the e-car, electric scooter or electric bike. And I just want to go to that part, then I can skip this. and there's a voiceover that talks about. So here you'll see that we have simulated AR, the augmented reality, inside virtual reality. So sometimes because AR is not as well developed right now, we talk about AR in VR. And you can see that the advertising talks about future. We included our sponsors in there. So the user has picked up the e-bike, and you can go to the rest of the ride in the park on an e-bike. And when you're riding the bike, you can actually look around. And one of these things was really fun because when you're going on the bridge, the birds fly off because you are too close to them. So those kind of experiences we can build. They're interactive and they're a lot of fun. So I'm just going to skip this part because I feel like we're running out of time a little bit. But this is how the final delivery was done. It was a huge tent in this exhibition outdoor because Vancouver summers are great. So you can see all these people, kids, a lot of people of across the ranges. We had about 20 headsets, 20 VR headsets, and the promotion ran for about 3 or 4 weeks. But it was successful, so they ran it again. And thousands of people saw what the future of public transport is going to be in Vancouver and in North America. So that's the journey. But one of the things that I'm so passionate about VR, why people ask me, why are you so passionate about VR? Yeah? Why do you love it so much? For me, it's the best way to tell a story. It builds on the mediums like the audio, the radio. It builds on film and games because it's not only interactive like games, it's also immersive. And you have 6 degrees of freedom. So you can not only go up, down, left, right, but you can move forwards or backwards. And there's interaction and there's VFX. So you can tell some great stories. You can build some great worlds, very immersive world. But the highest thing for me is like when you see something in VR, it's not only some information in a book or it's not something you heard, it becomes a memory. You live that memory. It's like going to Paris is a memory, or watching a picture of Paris is a book. So the retention and recall is so much higher. And there have been experiments that students, when they learn in VR, their retention can be about 60% higher. And when they learn, their grades can go up 1 level. So for example, if you're getting a B, you can start getting an A because you learned it so well. You not just read it. And for me, another thing that is most important is VR and AR are ultimate empathy building machines. They're the best media for building empathy. So if you want to tell a story about somebody who's underprivileged, somebody who's in the future, somebody who's not a human, maybe a story from a dog's point of view, AR and VR are the best mediums to do it. And that's all from me today. And I'm looking forward to all your questions. These are my contact details. That's the studio I work for. That's the VR AR program at the VFS that I teach at. And that's my website. If you want to take a look, you can contact me. And I'll just encourage Professor Juan Carlos to have any questions if you have for me. And thanks a lot for listening through me going through all this stuff.
Okay.
Very, very fast.
Okay. Hello. Thank you so much, Pushkar, for this talk. Are you listening okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I can
okay.
hear you well. Thanks.
Well, we have a lot of questions because we are also transmitting this talk by YouTube, the YouTube of the university. So these are the first questions. How do you know when a UX experience, whatever virtual reality or augmented reality, has been a totally success? How do you know if you achieve your goals with the experience?
So throughout the process that we are creating these experiences, we're doing a lot of user testing at every stage. At the gray box stage, the orange box stage, we're doing a lot of user tests. And that's the only way to know because we as creators, we are biased sometimes about our creations, but the player will give you the best feedback. And more than the kind of feedback they tell you, you can observe them, you can watch them. And if you know if they're immersed, if they are feeling that feeling of presence or not by their body language, it never lies. So if you see a player that is comfortable, they're enjoying the game, they're scared, or they're happy, that's the best way to know, did you achieve your goal of doing the perfect UX? And there is no such thing as perfect, right? It's subjective. Somebody might really enjoy it, somebody might not, but you know if they're immersed or not based on their reaction, the body language, and the user test. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, of course. Well, there is another question. Have you used virtual reality or augmented reality to sensitize people about soft skills such as leadership, teamwork? And can you give us an example of that?
So I haven't worked on exactly those experiences you're talking about, soft skill, but there have been some great examples done by other people where there's a VR program that teaches you how to present in a huge audience. But also I have personally worked on an experience where we work with the government of British Columbia, the state, and they have a program called WorkSafe. So we taught people to use power tools like a grinder or a cutter in VR. And it was such a great experience because not only these students learned how to use cutting tools or a saw, they learned it as an experience, and also nobody lost their fingers or hand because it's all virtual, right? So we minimize risk and we have higher retention and recall. So the experience was created as a pilot program, and now the WorkSafe as a corporation is trying to build it for all kinds of training. So maybe it could be things like power tools, like I mentioned, but it could be like training how to use a crane, because not everybody can get on top of a crane with that. They're not that many cranes, or use a forklift, for example. So there's a lot of potential for training in VR, and I just happen to work on a few of those.
Okay, thank you. Well, next questions. It's about fears. Do you think that, for example, a virtual reality can help us to overcome some phobias, for example, or fears of heights? It could be help to some people with this kind of phobias or fears?
So I personally haven't worked on anything like this, but I've seen experiences where they're trying to make people get over their fear of heights, for example. There's a very interesting game called Richie's Plank Experience, which actually you get on top of a building and you walk on this plank, and it feels quite real. But I don't know about any training experience which are legitimate for medically backed. But there is a lot of research that is happening. For example, a friend of mine works on a simulation where they teach people to perform surgeries. So, the educational potential is quite big, but I haven't personally heard of a lot of working phobias. I'm sure it's happening in all kinds of fields.
Okay, thank you. Well, next question. Do you think all stories can be told through VR or augmented reality?
Like I mentioned, there's a type of story that works really well in VR, and there's a type of story that could work really well in AR. But there are a million type of stories, right? So I'm sure some of them work, most of them work in VR and AR because it gives you more freedom, it gives you more agency and more immersion. But I'm sure there are certain kind of stories that won't work in VR and AR. Just like a lot of stories can't be filmed. For example, Lord of the Rings, before the movie was made, I'm a huge fan, but it was supposed to be unfilmable because it's just such a big world, right? But somebody made it happen. So we are at the beginning of AR and VR, and who knows where this is going to end. It's like the beginning of internet, right? We never could have predicted what Uber is going to be at the beginning of internet, but now it's a reality for us. So a lot of stories will be told, and some stories won't be able to tell now, but for sure in the future. I'm pretty positive about that.
Okay, our next questions, it's related to this one. I don't know if I believe you have seen this film, Ready Player One, of Steven Spielberg. How close do you think we are to this kind of situation of reality that we saw in the film?
So I'm a huge fan of Ready Player One, not only the movie, but the book. And recently read Ready Player 2, which is also an amazing book. If you get a chance, you should read. I think we are not there yet as far as I go. But there are things like metaverse. That is the talk that is upcoming. Like there are worlds like Rec Room. There are metaverse like Horizon from Facebook and VR chat. So I think these worlds are a beginning of oasis that is talked about in Ready Player One. And interesting fact that when I did my master's, we had to do a book report or a thesis, kind of a small thesis on Ready Player One and Neuromancer, which are such a great examples of virtual world and future. So the short answer is I don't think we are there yet, but we are getting there, and it'll be here sooner than you imagine. And a lot of people talk about fidelity because it doesn't look as real as the real world, right? There's a gap. But I feel like once you try things like Rec Room, Horizon VR, you'll realize that fidelity is not everything. Even though it doesn't look real, players can find a great relationship. They can have great conversation. Like in our company, we meet every Friday and play games in VR because we are remote in Rec Room. And it's such a great feeling because we bond just like we are meeting in the office. We laugh, we cry, we shout at each other. So the feeling is there. The fidelity is going to take some time to come.
Okay, thank you. Well, there's a lot of questions. I don't know if we can tell everyone or ask everything, but I must pick one of them. This is for one of us or students. She wants to ask you which tips or abilities or skills would you recommend us to research, take in account if we want to develop this kind of experience? Which abilities, tips, I don't know, maybe which program should I look for to do the things that you are doing now?
So I think the question I'm going to try to answer in the best possible way because there's a lot, right? Like for example, in my studio, there's 45 people, and each one of them is a domain expert. Like somebody's on animation. So I'm myself or a UX designer, UI designer. There are technical artists. So there are many ways you could do this, but it's usually a teamwork. My best tip would be to get better at design, to get better at telling stories. And like I mentioned before, learn to think in 3 dimensions. Don't restrict yourself to 2 dimensions. Have interactive experiences. So those are the kind of skills. I myself, this is just me, but I am tools agnostic. What I mean by that is I don't think tools matter as much as we make them, we think of them. For example, the things that we use to make these experiences are game engines, known as Unity 3D or Unreal Engine, or in case of Doom, we had to use client's own engine. So there are many, many tools, but there are a certain soft skills like to be able to tell a story, to design experience, to create that feeling of presence. These are skills that you can enhance yourself by seeing more experiences, by understanding, by breaking them down, by learning to tell, by storytelling, by understanding hero's journey. Those kind of things are much more, and they'll go in the long run. But if you want to learn a software, I would suggest pick up a game engine. It doesn't matter which one. Just pick up a game engine and start making things. Don't wait for somebody to give you a big break. Just start making things. First, you'll make bad experiences. but then you're going to copy them, and then you're going to get better and better and better. We all started like that, and you could also start like that.
Okay, thank you. Well, the next question is about in virtual reality, we have almost an open world. How do you focus the attention for your story? For example, how do you prevent that some people go in a different direction that you wanted him to go to achieve the final boss, or to how do you guide him in this open world?
This is such a great question, because that is something that is a big task, right? And there are many, many ways you could do it. But one of the things is a task of a level designer where they create a wayfinding. Like, have you imagined, like, as soon as you get into a bus station or an airport, how do we know which way to go? By wayfinding, right? There are signs, there are sounds. So there are many ways we could tell you direct user, like animation or motion is a great way to call attention. Sound, like in VR, we have many tools available to us, and one of the most important tools that is sometimes overlooked is spatial sound. So, for example, I'm sitting here and the sound is playing to my right side. I know I have to go there. So there is a lot of decision making. So, for example, in Doom, I hear this monster shouting at my right side. Then I have to quickly make a decision that, am I equipped with the right ammunition or weapons to go and fight that monster? Then I go right. But if I don't have that ammunition, I go on the left. So, like you can make things like sound, visual, VFX use really well to direct the player. And there is also, just by the definition that I spoke about before, that in VR we have 6 degrees of freedom. So player has complete agency. They can go anywhere they like. Just like open world games, right? There is the golden path where the player is supposed to go. But many times we just wander around because that's the fun of it, right? But at the same time, we can direct them with these tools like sound, VFX, motion, all the tools we have in our toolkit.
Okay, thank you. When we have one last question, because we're out of time, it's a little more personal. How is to work with big video games companies? What do you need to work with them? Because our students always dream of working with EA and all these big companies. So how is working with them, and what do you need to work with them?
I can only partly answer that question because I don't work for a huge studio. I work for a studio. There's 40, 50 of us. We are a mid-sized studio. Sometimes we get contracted for work for these huge studios you dream about. For example, Doom, we worked on Bethesda. Sometimes we work with other studios. I'll just tell the story from my point of view, that I feel like the most important thing to get into games is that passion for games, that ability to tell the story. So it's two-sided. It's passion and skills. So you have to be extremely passionate. Like in my company, everybody's a gamer. They enjoy creating worlds. They enjoy living worlds. We love discussing games. We love discussing these immersive experiences. We love discussing art. So that is one huge part. And the second part of that is skills. So there are many ways to get into a game studio. UI is just one way of creating it. But like I mentioned, you could be good as a game animator. You could be a game programmer. You could be a game UX designer. You could be a game marketing manager. So there are so many ways. So one is that passion about the game industry. And second would be to enhance your skills in the kind of field you want to go through. Because this is just a gateway. Like some people come in as designers, they become developers. Some people come in as UX researchers, they become game designers. Like some people start at quality assurance, they become creative director. So, like just get in somehow the easiest way you know how. Start by building your small games with your friends. Portfolio is really important because you want to just create something that we want to the kind of skills you want to look for, the kind of passion you want to. So your game will not be polished, your experience will not be AAA quality, but it shows what your vision is, because that's what is important. Because if you have the right vision and the passion, there are many people who can make it realize for you. So I hope that answers the question. It's a combination of passion and skills.
Vale, okay, bueno, thank you so much, Pushkar, for being with us. It's been really interesting for all our audience in YouTube, are the people who in this moment are in the auditorium. So really, really nice to have you here. I hope that someday you can come to visit us. Or maybe in a virtual reality simulation, you can come here to visit our university. Maybe in a next future, we have this kind of technology. Thank you so much for being with us and with our audience. Para todos ustedes, chicos, gracias por estar en este espacio. Nos vemos en un próximo Unisabana Ágora. Hasta la próxima.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you.
Bye.